I tested literally every perk on all 3 skill trees and arc raiders, and today we're going to go over all of them. Which are the best and which are the worst, and what the hell exactly each one does. Starting off on the green conditioning tree, the first perk is Used to the Weight. Wearing a shield doesn't slow you down as much. This has nothing to do with your stamina loss, but rather the movement speed of your raider. When wearing a light shield, I saw absolutely no difference in a side-to-side comparison. You're going to move at the exact same speed as if you didn't have the perk turned on at all. When you're wearing a medium shield though, the difference in movement speed was actually noticeable. With Used to the Weight maxed out at 5 points, I moved a bit faster with the medium shield as opposed to not having the perk on at all. But the heavy shield saw the most noticeable difference. You really feel more mobile when moving with this perk maxed out as opposed to not having any points in it at all. With that in mind, this all depends on how much you like rocking a medium or heavy shield, which may appeal more to the PvP folk out there. TLDR, if you like wearing a medium or especially a heavy shield, you should definitely go for this perk. I rank it very highly, putting it up in what I'm calling the very helpful tier. And by the way, stick around until the end of the video to see my rankings on everything and some full recommended skill tree builds. Next up, Gentle Pressure. You make less noise when breaching. Here's how much sound I made when breaching a door without the perk. And by comparison, here's how much sound I made breaching that same door with all 5 points dumped into Gentle Pressure. So yeah, you do make less noise, but you're still fairly loud to the point where I don't really see a lot of value in the perk. And in my book, I'm putting it into the not really helpful tier. Next, Blastborn. Your hearing is less affected by nearby explosions. And let's go for another audio test. Here's what it sounds like when you have no points at all in the perk. And here's what it sounds like when you have the perk maxed out. In a nutshell, that ringing noise you hear after an explosion goes off near you goes away much faster if you're using this perk. I think it all kind of depends on how annoyed you get by that ringing noise. If you're very annoyed by it, you might really appreciate it going away faster, especially in PvP where you're trying to listen for enemy audio cues. I don't really find it that great though, and for me personally, it goes in the not really helpful tier. Moving on, Fight or Flight. When you're hurt in combat, regain a fixed amount of stamina, has a cooldown between uses. This one is really easy to see the effects of. I deal damage to myself, and like magic, I get a big fat chunk of free stamina right away. And while that might seem boring, I think this is huge. If you ever take a lot of damage out of nowhere, either in PvE or especially PvP, you might need to immediately run away or get to cover. I think this is an elite perk, and I put it all the way up in the very helpful tier. And hey, you know what else goes up in the very helpful tier? Manscaped, the sponsor of today's video, god tier at keeping dudes like us clean and presentable. Fellas, today we unveil the latest masterpiece from Manscaped, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra in the new Desert Sand colorway. This new special edition trimmer pairs rugged style with precision and performance. It's got a good weight to it, and watch as I give you a brief demo on myself. That's my hand and wrist, by the way. Get your mind out of the gutter. We ain't on OnlyFans out here. Anyway, the 5.0 Ultra Desert Sand features longer, wider, and rounded teeth that cut through hair with ease. But it also comes with a foil blade designed to leave you with a finish that's irresistibly sleek and bare. It's like having 2 trimmers in one, making sure you're always looking trim and great without breaking the bank. And of course, it has everything you'd come to expect from Manscaped. Patented skin-safe technology, a handy travel lock to ensure it doesn't turn on when you travel, and as always, it's waterproof, making for easy bathroom cleanup. Don't wait, head on over to manscaped.com/falloutplays and use promo code Fallout to get 15% off your order site-wide. Again, promo code Fallout for 15% off your order site-wide, and thank you, Manscaped. Alright, we back. Proficient Pryer. Breaching doors and containers takes less time. I found that at 5 stacks, you'll finish breaching a door exactly 3 seconds faster than if you had no points in the perk at all. In regards to opening a container, I found that with the perk maxed out, you'll breach a container open exactly 1 second faster. It's kinda up to you. 3 seconds for a door and 1 for a container ain't that fast. It depends on how often you find yourself either breaching doors or containers per match. Loot goblins may get some value out of this perk, but I'm personally gonna put it in the not really helpful tier. Next, Unburdened Roll. If your shield breaks, your first dodge roll within a few seconds does not cost stamina. This perk works as advertised. Break your shield, hit that dodge roll, and no stamina will be spent. I think this perk might be more helpful than you realize, especially if you've been shot out of nowhere by a bloodthirsty enemy raider. It's only one free dodge roll, but it can potentially help you get out of danger. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the somewhat helpful tier, and again, I think this might be more valuable for the PvP folk out there. Moving on to Survivor's Stamina. When you're critically hurt, your stamina regenerates faster. When I fall off a big ledge and get down to critical health, my stamina does regenerate a bit faster, but not by a ton. This definitely can be handy, but because the regeneration boost isn't insane, I don't think it's as immediately helpful as the way superior fight or flight. Still though, I'm definitely putting it into the somewhat helpful category. Downed but determined. When you're downed, it takes longer before you collapse. With 5 points dumped into this perk, I found out that you'll stay alive for a very impressive 34 seconds longer, way more than I was initially expecting. Granted, this is of course if you take no extra damage from another player shooting you when you're down, but yeah. I think this has value for PvE and PvP. Being able to hold on a little bit longer before either a teammate or a good-hearted solo player runs over to tag you with a defib, I kinda like it, and it might be bold, but I'm putting this into the very helpful tier. A little extra. Breaching an object generates resources. This is a weird one. When you breach any container on the map, you'll generate a resource that will appear on the floor in front of that container, aka metal parts, chemicals, plastic, and so on. Although 1 or 2 times I generated springs, which was kind of interesting. I think if you're the kind of player who goes through metal parts a lot, like I do, which I use mainly for weapon upgrades, this could have value. But then again, we kinda already have Scrappy, who gives you a ton of free materials on the regular. I think it depends on the player, but I'm gonna put it into the not really helpful category for me personally. Kinda annoyingly though, I might recommend you take it because it means you gain access to loaded arms. Your equipped weapon has less impact on your encumbrance. Check it out. Without the perk on, I equip a Jupiter, and between my augment, the shield, and the Jupiter, my total carry weight currently sits at 14 out of 50. Then I activate loaded arms, and now my carry weight has gone down to 9.5 out of 50. Let's try it with 2 weapons. Here I have both a Jupiter and a Venator with a few attachments for a total of 20.5. Now I activate loaded arms, and our weight goes down to just 12.8. We've only lost a total of 7.7 pounds, but hey, in a looting game where being over encumbered really sucks, I like this perk, especially because you only need to put 1 point into it, not 5. For me, this goes into the somewhat helpful tier, but if you're a player who likes to really go full on loot goblin every game, I would 100% understand you putting this into the very helpful tier. Turtle crawl. While downed, you take less damage. Quick side note, big shout out to the 2 very confused strangers I asked to help me test this perk. Yo, can you do me a very weird favor? I'm gonna down myself, and you're gonna keep shooting me until I go from being downed to dead. But anyway, I gave a complete stranger a Pharaoh and asked them to start shooting me after I had downed myself. Without the perk, I died after about 4 shots from the Pharaoh when downed, and with the perk, I died after about 6 shots from the Pharaoh when downed. Overall, I feel this perk will really only be valuable if you find yourself in PvP situations a lot where other players might be intentionally trying to finish you off while you attempt to crawl to safety. Personally, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the somewhat helpful tier. Moving on, back on your feet. When you're critically hurt, your health regenerates until a certain point. I'm not gonna lie, on paper that sounds goddamn fire, but in practice it is really not. After being critically hurt, I found that the perk won't activate until a whole 30 seconds have gone by. After that point, your health will crawl back very slowly over a period of 25 or so seconds, and it'll only give you about 25% of your overall health meter back. In my opinion, this perk is insanely disappointing for an end of tree level option. I think most normal players are just gonna manually heal themselves way earlier and not just stand around waiting 30 seconds for the perk to kick in, and then 25 more seconds to just eke back a quarter of your goddamn health bar. I really think this perk is a huge joke. I'm ranking it into the almost never helpful tier without question. Finally, the melee focused options, of which there are 3. Effortless swing. Melee abilities cost less stamina. Without this perk, I was able to take 7 swings until completely out of stamina. And with this perk maxed out at ×5, I was able to take 11 swings before running out of stamina. I guess if you really love the idea of making a melee build, you can go ahead and roll with this perk, but for me, it is undeniably an almost never helpful level perk. And on that note, Sky Clearing Swing. You deal more melee damage to drones. This is a really confusing perk. Without the perk being active at all, I found that you can still have the ability to potentially melee one-hit kill a wasp if, when you swing, you manage to hit one of their propellers. But if you don't hit a propeller, it can take around 2 or 3 swings to bring down the wasp. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, with the perk active, it'll probably be way better. And yet, with the perk totally maxed out, it can still take 2 to 3 swings to take down a wasp. So what the fuck? Not to mention, half the time you try to roll up on a wasp to melee it, the damn thing sees you coming and then starts to back way up to shoot you, which is really freaking annoying. And don't even get me started on hornets, because even with this perk maxed out, they still take a bajillion hits to melee to death, to the point where I would genuinely rather circumcise myself with a grapefruit spoon instead of attempt to melee whack them to death. I mean, really, honestly, just shoot them. It is a million times easier. Bullets are dirt cheap to craft, and you can find them easily during a raid. If you really want to go have a, quote, fun melee build, and I use that term very lightly, then go ahead. But wow, massive hell no from me on that perk, putting it into the almost never helpful tier. And finally, on the green tree, we come to FLYSWATTER. Wasps and turrets can now be destroyed with a single melee attack. Pretty self-explanatory, although again, sometimes if you try to melee a wasp, it'll see you coming and then fly way back to get into I'ma shoot you mode. And by the way, half the turrets in the game are out of melee reach, so I really genuinely don't see the point of using this perk. If you've played a ton of Arc Raiders and you want to try it out for funsies, you go right ahead. I am putting this into the almost never helpful tier, and I don't even feel a little bit bad about it. Again, I'll have a full recommended skill tree at the end of the video, but for now, let's move on to the yellow tree, i.e. the mobility tree. Nimble Climber. You can climb and vault more quickly. Got a few side-by-sides here for your viewing pleasure. First up, climbing. Here is the side-by-side. Yeah, it's a little bit faster, but we really have to kind of slow the clip down. Even with the perk at max power, it's only just a little bit faster than with no points at all, which, yeah, not bad, I guess, but a little bit disappointing. In the vaulting category, it's even kind of harder to notice. Again, you gotta really slow the footage down to see the difference in speed. Even with 5 perks dumped into Nimble Climber, it doesn't really seem to speed things up that much. For me personally, this goes into the not really helpful tier. Next up, Marathon Runner. Moving around costs less stamina. With 5 points dumped into the perk, I found out the following. When wearing a light shield, you can run around for about 3 more seconds, give or take, before fully running out of stamina. It was the same thing with the medium shield, around 3 more seconds of being able to run before running out of stamina. With the heavy shield equipped, it was more like being able to run for around 2 3/4 more of a second, which is kind of nitpicky, but I'm just trying to be accurate here. Anywho, while this perk isn't really sexy on paper, when you really think about it, one thing you will always be doing in this game is running all the goddamn time running. With that in mind, I think I'm actually going to put this up into the very helpful tier. Over the course of your entire Arc Raiders career, you will get a lot of mileage out of this perk. Slip and slide. You can slide further and faster. Yeah, pretty straightforward. In a side-by-side, you can tell that with the perk maxed out, you indeed slide a bit further and a bit faster to compensate for the extra length. I think this perk is 100% designed for PvP players who like to play aggressively. But if you're on your knees more than your mom, then yeah, this perk may be a pretty good pick for you. Depending on how much PvP you play, I'm going to throw this into the somewhat helpful tier. Youthful Lungs increases your max stamina. Because I'm a fan of Marathon Runner, I wanted to see how much value you could get out of Youthful Lungs and Marathon Runner together. As we already know, Marathon Runner can let you run around for 2 3/4 to 3 seconds longer than if you had no points in the yellow tree at all. But I found that if you have both 5 points in Marathon Runner and 5 points in Youthful Lungs, you can now run around for 5 seconds longer than if you just had 5 points in Marathon Runner. Meaning Youthful Lungs and Marathon Runner do stack together, and both those perks really are great. Youthful Lungs, without question, joins Marathon Runner up in the very helpful tier, and unless Embark nerfs both of these, I will always have both of these perks maxed out. On the other side of the tree, we got Sturdy Ankles. You take less fall damage when falling from a non-lethal height. And yeah, works exactly like you'd expect. Fall from a non-lethal height and you take a little bit less damage. Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of know from experience how high I can fall from before I start to take fall damage. And if I'm up that high, I usually just won't jump, or I'll use a zipline or something. So unless you're incredibly clumsy and keep Wile E coyoting yourself off the map by accident, I maybe recommend not getting this perk. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the not really helpful tier. Moving on, Calming Stroll. While walking, your stamina regenerates as if you were standing still. I briefly covered this in my I busted 50 myths in RAIDER'S video, link down in the pinned comment if you haven't seen it yet, but I'd heard some people claiming this perk doesn't work. It actually does, but if you're on mouse and keyboard, you might think it doesn't work because what you think is walking in game is actually kind of jogging, not walking. In order to actually walk on mouse and keyboard, you have to go into the game settings and enter a key to allow you to walk. Controller players, though, can walk by just gently nudging the joystick forward. Anyway, yeah, overall, I think this is a solid perk, especially considering you only need to put 1 point into it and not 5. Not really very flashy, but again, considering that running is something we do all the time in RAIDER'S, I'm putting this into the very helpful tier. Across the tree, we have Carry the Momentum. After a sprint dodge roll, sprinting does not consume stamina for a short time, has a cooldown between uses. Exactly what it sounds like. After a sprint dodge roll, I found that your stamina meter will not deplete for about 3 seconds, give or take, after you start sprinting. Can definitely help you out if you're trying to get out of danger, so I'm putting it into the somewhat helpful tier. Off the wall, you can wall leap further. This covers both leaping out horizontally, like from a ladder, and it also covers how far you can leap when you're kind of holding onto a ledge and just jump shimmying along the side of the edge. I don't know about y'all, but I really can't think of one situation where I would find this perk useful to my playstyle. Sadly, it goes into the almost never helpful category for me without hesitation. And the perk above it ain't that much better, Ready to Roll. When falling, your timing window to perform a recovery roll is increased. This is one where I can't really show you the benefit too much, even with a clip, but yeah, when you're falling, if you hit the roll button right before you hit the ground, you kind of do a little tumble move to avoid fall damage, provided you don't fall from way too high up, of course. Look, every player is going to be different, but personally, I don't feel like I need any help with timing my recovery roll. The window is already pretty generous. If you like the perk, then hey man, you do you, but for me this goes into the almost never helpful tier, which is fine because it just means I avoid that section of the yellow tree entirely. Let's hop over to the middle with Crawl Before You Walk. When you're downed, you crawl faster. I did a side-by-side where I downed myself in the exact same spot and then crawled in a straight line for as long as I could. I also decided to measure how long it took me to reach the very end of this little concrete ledge I was crawling on. Without the perk on, it took about 69 seconds, and with the perk maxed out, it took around 45 seconds, which, accounting for human error, is around 35% faster crawl speed, give or take. Which, by the way, not frickin' bad at all. I think if you play PvP or trios, this is actually a fairly solid perk. It might not always save you, but being able to crawl to safety faster for a potential revive is something that could save your life. Somewhat helpful tier for me, for sure. Right above it, we have Vigorous Vaulter. Vaulting is no longer slowed down when exhausted. I'm gonna have to slow the footage way down for both clips so you can notice a difference, but this perk will help you both with vaulting, aka kind of leaping over a waist-high obstacle when running, and it'll also help you with straight up climbing to a higher ledge. Honestly, I think the only thing this perk has going for it is the fact that you only need to spend 1 point on the perk, not 5. Even still though, I'm gonna put this into the not really helpful tier based on the fact that it barely seems to speed you up and it only works when you're exhausted. On the far left side, we have Effortless Roll. Dodge rolls cost less stamina. Not exactly flashy, but it delivers exactly what it says. When the perk is not on, I was able to pull off 7 dodge rolls in a row before running out of stamina. With the perk on, I was able to pull off 11 rolls in a row before running out of stamina. And even though the perk reads dodge rolls and not sprint dodge rolls, I found out in testing that it actually does work for sprint dodge rolling too. Without the perk, I was able to pull off 3 in a row before running out of stamina, but with the perk maxed out, I was able to pull off 5 in a row. Dodging is handy in getting out of danger in both PvE and PvP, and in my book, this without question belongs in the very helpful tier. I will keep this maxed out forever. Next in line, we have Heroic Leap. You can sprint, dodge, roll further. In the side-by-side, yeah, you do leap a little bit further, and that's about it. I think some aggro PvP players may find some value in this from time to time, but for me, I'm gonna put it in the not really helpful tier. Don't get me wrong, I love sprint dodging, but going a few extra inches deeper ain't really doing much for me personally. I think I'm plenty lethal without it. At the end of the yellow tree, we have vaults on vaults on vaults. Vaulting no longer requires stamina. This works for both forms of vaulting, aka jumping over an obstacle at waist height and also when leaping up and climbing onto a ledge. With this perk active, you'll no longer burn stamina doing these moves. Your stamina will just kind of temporarily pause when doing them. Stamina preservation is always respectable, and I'm putting it into the somewhat helpful tier. The other end of tree perk is Vault Spring, which lets you jump at the end of a vault. This doesn't seem to work when climbing, but only when you're hopping over a waist-high obstacle. Basically, if you hit the jump button when you're about halfway over, you do a little leap at the end of the vault, springing you forward a little bit. And while it's fun to play around with, I don't always find a lot of opportunities to use this perk during an actual raid. Feel free to prove me wrong with any clips you might have of this perk actually helping you out, but I'm putting it into the almost never helpful tier. Moving on to the red tree, aka the survival tree, and we're kicking it off with Agile Croucher. Your movement speed while crouching is increased. In a side-by-side comparison and taking into account how fast I was able to move from one specific point to another, I'm estimating that at max stacks, you crouch walk around 15% faster. I think the viability of this perk depends on if you want to be a sneaky PvPer, creeping up on people when you can. If that's the case, definitely go ahead and take this perk, but I'm going to go ahead and put it into the not really helpful tier for me personally. On the left path, we have Looter's Instincts. When searching a container, loot is revealed faster. We have a lot to talk about with this perk. While I was working on this exact video you're watching, Embark Studios pushed out update 1.13.0, and players immediately noticed a difference in how fast loot was revealed when opening any container. You see, before the update went live, loot was revealed very fast, and with Looter's Instincts, it was blindingly fast. But currently, under update 1.13.0, loot is now revealed super slow. I'm talking, if you have no points invested into Looter's Instincts, it's borderline physically painful waiting for the loot to be revealed. And unfortunately, according to Embark Studios, this change in looting speed is 100% intended. And now that we know how slow looting is supposed to be in the game, I feel that Looter's Instincts is almost a borderline mandatory perk. I'm being completely serious, looting without this perk feels painful, and while I am expecting a rebalance at some point in the future, I am for now putting this perk all the way up in the very helpful category. Next, on the left-hand side, we have Silent Scavenger. You make less noise when looting. Let's take a listen. Here's me opening a container without the perk. And here's me opening that same exact container with the perk maxed out. And let's do one more, opening a different container without the perk. And opening that same container with the perk maxed out. Yeah, I can't really recommend Silent Scavenger a whole lot. You still make noise no matter what, and while there might be some cases where the enemy could be just far enough away to maybe not hear, it just doesn't feel like it's worth it for me. I'm gonna go ahead and put it into the not really helpful tier. On the right side, we have Revitalizing Squat. Stamina regeneration while crouched is increased. In my testing, I found with the perk totally off, I regened my stamina in 14 seconds while crouching, and then with the perk maxed out, I fully regened my stamina in around 11 seconds. Not crazy good, but definitely not bad. And because we need 16 points to unlock the next tier of perks on the red tree, this is usually one that I'll end up dumping 5 points into. I'm putting it into the somewhat helpful tier. Moving on, in-round crafting unlocks the ability to field craft items while topside. This perk gives you the ability to craft all of the following during a match, provided you have the materials: Lil Smoke Grenade, Impact Grenade, fruit mix, shield recharger, adrenaline shot, agave juice, bandage, and flame spray. I find the things I make most frequently are shield rechargers, adrenaline shots, and bandages by far. It can be handy if you're in a pinch and you only need to put 1 point into it, not 5, so I'm putting it into the somewhat helpful tier for sure. Next up, good is new. While under a healing effect, stamina regeneration is increased. As imagined, the amount it improves your stamina regen isn't completely insane, but still every little bit helps, and especially if you're a PvPer, you might need all the extra stamina you can get when fighting off an enemy raider. I'm putting this into the somewhat helpful tier without question. On the other side of the tree, we got Suffer in Silence. While critically hurt, your movement makes less noise. This one is interesting. I found it kind of makes a difference depending on what kind of surface you're running on, but overall, I think it actually does make a difference. Check it out. Here's me running down some metal stairs with the perk off. And now here's me running down those same stairs with the perk on. It's actually not bad, and considering you only need to put 1 point into the perk, I think it's a decent choice for PvP players, and I'm putting it into the somewhat helpful tier. Not to mention, I especially recommend it because taking it means you have access to broad shoulders, increases the maximum weight you can carry. In a nutshell, this perk allows you to carry 10 more pounds on top of your augment's regular weight limit. For example, the Looting Mark 1, which usually allows you to carry only 50 pounds, will have that number bumped up to 60. The Looting Mark 3 Survivor, which normally allows you to carry 80, broad shoulders will bump that number up to 90. You get the idea. Looting is a huge part of arc raiders, and I hate being over encumbered, so for me, this perk 100% goes into the very helpful tier. The next perk on the far left is Looter's Luck. While looting, there's a chance to reveal twice as many items at once. To repeat what I mentioned earlier, looting speed was recently nerfed in arc raiders, and it's now being revealed very slowly. And while I don't think this is quite as good as Looter's Instincts, which IMO is now a borderline mandatory perk, Looter's Luck is still pretty great and helps you loot faster, which I find valuable. The frequency at which Looter's Luck activates seems to be based in RNG, which I do find annoying, but I'm still putting it up in the somewhat helpful category. Over in the middle, we got Traveling Tinkerer, unlocks additional items for you to field craft. Piggybacking off of in-round crafting, Traveling Tinkerer allows you to now craft the Noisemaker, Blaze, Gas, Smoke, and Lure Grenade Traps, Herbal Bandages, and Raider Hatch Keys. I have mixed feelings about this perk. Out of every additional item you can make, the only ones here I really like are Herbal Bandages and Raider Hatch Keys. And honestly, if you really like Raider Hatch Keys, you should probably just craft and bring one in advance. But I guess if you're completely out of materials to craft one before loading into a match, then yeah, this perk can help. I don't know. It's only one skill perk, so you do you, but I'm putting it into the somewhat helpful tier only for the Raider Hatch Key factor. Feel free to pass on this one if you don't care. Next in the middle branch, one Raider Scraps. When looting Raider containers, you have a small chance of finding additional field crafted items. Coming up with hard data on this perk was actually close to impossible because when you're opening up a container, you can't really know for sure what loot you were gonna get anyway and what loot was due to one Raider Scraps activating. And for the record, this is not just for Raider caches. I heard that somewhere. Raider containers are more than just Raider caches. But anyway, I feel like I was getting more weapon mods and simple gun parts when I had this perk on, but you can always just buy those. At the end of the day, I'm officially putting it into the not really helpful tier. On the far right side, we have Stubborn Mule. Your stamina regeneration is less affected by being over encumbered. While I normally really like perks that help you regen or maintain your stamina, I've got a really great strategy you can use, and it means you won't need to take this perk. All right, you ready? Go ahead and write this down. Don't get over encumbered. Being over encumbered sucks in general. You become a sitting duck in both PvE and PvP, so yeah, miss me with Stubborn Mule. I'm putting that sucker into the almost never helpful tier, and I don't feel bad about it. Next on the right is 3 Deep Breaths. After an ability drains your stamina, you recover more quickly. This is a very weird perk. After testing it a few times, I thought it straight up wasn't working. You see, it doesn't make it so that your stamina comes back faster after an ability, like a slide or a dodge. But if you expend all of your stamina from an ability, then you know know when your stamina is just starting to come back and it's like flashing, aka being exhausted? That is when the perk works. 3 deep breaths will make it so that your stamina will stop flashing faster, aka you'll get out of the exhausted state a little bit faster. But at that point, I'm usually letting my stamina fully regen rather than just breaking out into another sprint right away. I don't know, use it if you want, but I'm not really a fan. Not really helpful tier for me personally. At the end of the right side, we have MINESWEEPER. Mines and explosive deployables can be diffused when in close proximity. Man, oh man, how I hate this perk. If it could let you sneak up and defuse an explosive or a jolt mine, that would be awesome. But it doesn't. They still get set off when you get close to them. So really, MINESWEEPER only works on things like grenade traps. You'll be able to approach them, and if you can see them and have access to them, you can manually defuse them. But even then, the perk still sucks, because anyone putting down one of those traps who has a brain will put them into a very difficult to reach location, or in a location where they'll activate immediately no matter what. Not to mention, even if you don't have MINESWEEPER and you can see a trap that you would have been able to approach and defuse, you can always just shoot it to get rid of it. I think this is a huge waste of a perk. Almost never helpful tier for me. Finally, we come to Security Breach. Lets you breach security lockers. This perk used to be incredible when RAIDER'S launched, but has taken a few nerfs since then. First of all, security locker locations are no longer guaranteed. They still can spawn in set locations, but the keyword is can. You might find one there one time, but then not find it there another time. It's RNG, which can be annoying. And the quality of the loot inside the locker has been nerfed as well. It's basically no longer guaranteed insane loot. I still find that every now and then I can find cool stuff like blue tier weapons or something like a Wolfpack grenade, which I'll definitely take. I know some people stopped loving it after the nerf, but I still kind of like it. I'm putting it up in the somewhat helpful tier. Here is my final skill tree tier list in a nutshell if you want to go ahead and argue about it down in the comment section. But why don't we move on to some recommended skill trees, of which I have 2. First up, we have the recommended PvP skill tree, which has 27 points in green, 27 in yellow, and 21 in red. You'll notice there's no end of tree perk selected, and I'm actually very okay with that because as we've been over, a lot of them are actually quite bad. And of course, that is only 75 points total, so if you've completed an expedition, you'll have 5 more points to do whatever the hell you want with. If you don't really care about trios PvP and you're kind of a peaceful solo PvE loot goblin, this tree might be a little bit more you. This build has 37 in the red tree because I wanted to allow the loot demons access to security breach if they want to, while still including some other great perks from the green and yellow trees. But if you're a solo player and you don't want to use security breach, feel free to F around with the build however you want. Give the video a like if you think I earned it, and please share it with a misguided friend who swears that back on your feet is a great perk, even though it's actually terrible. See you on stream. Thanks for watching. Peace.